In this video, we are going to talk about some properties of a Python program. The first thing that you have to notice in Python programming is the case sensitivity. If you look at this program that we wrote in the previous videos, the program gets a temperature in Celsius and it just converts it to Fahrenheit. Now to see what will happen if we change the case of one of these functions, for instance, print. You can see that print is in all lowercase. Let's change P to uppercase because it looks nicer. Now, if you try to run the program, if you hit F5, you can see that the first line of the code is executed. Remember that Python is a scripting language. And what it means is that it's not going to create an executable file at the moment. It's just going to execute each line one by one until it either ends the program or it encounters an error. The first line of the code, there is nothing wrong with it, so it's just waiting for an input for the temperature in Celsius. Let's say the temperature is 10. As soon as I hit 10 and then enter, you can see that the error message in red appears on the screen. This is telling us that the print function that we are calling here is not part of the Python because it's not defined. P is not supposed to be in uppercase. So this shows you that Python is case sensitive. So do not try to change the cases of the function names. That's the first thing. The other thing that we notice about Python is the spaces. Space doesn't matter if it's after a command name. For instance, for the print here, if I put, let's say, one space here and then try to run it, then it's going to again ask me the temperature, and you can see that the print command works. So this space didn't do anything. Python ignores these spaces here. But what about the spaces before the command? For instance, here, if I hit space here, let's see what will happen. If I run the program again, it's going to stop, gives me an error because this space before the command name is important. The reason is that indentation in Python is very, very important. In some languages, they use curly bracket to put a series of lines of code together. In Python, there is no curly bracket. The indentation is going to specify to Python the piece of code which is all together. Right now, if I take this space out and run it again, you can see that the program is going to work again. Now let's talk about the arguments to the print function. Here you have print open bracket, you have a variable name here, then another argument or parameter separated with a comma, then another comma, then we have an expression here which is evaluated, and then comma, then you have a string here. These are all the arguments that we are passing to print function. There are a couple of very important arguments that we can use to pass through the print function. One of these arguments is called sep, S-E-P. Now, sep character do you want to use as a separator for the arguments. The default is space, a white space. You can specify a different character or characters to represent the space between the arguments. For instance, at the moment, if I run the program and I enter a value, you can see that the space is used to separate these arguments that I have here. Temp is 10, then space, then degrees Celsius is, then space, and then 50, the result of this expression, and then the string which says degrees Fahrenheit. Let's say that I want to separate these parameters using a different character. Let's say I want this time using the sep parameter equal to double quotation mark. Let's say we want to use something like /. Now let's see what is the output now. If I run the program again and I enter 10, you can see now instead of space, a / is used to separate the output. Another one here and another one here. Now, do you have to use only one character? No. I can use something like, let's say, Dora as my separator. So if I run it again, now this time you can see 10 and then Dora and then the string. Then after is I have Dora, then the result of the expression, then I have Dora again and the string. So you can use this sep to specify the string or the character to be used as the separator between the output. Another one which is very important is called end. When the print command is done, it will automatically output a next line character. So it goes at the beginning of the next line. What will happen if we want to have all the print commands to print on the same line of output? To give you an example, let's say I say here end is equal to blank. This is going to specify that when the output is displayed here, do not execute the next line and then go to the next line of the code. So let's change this one because this is a little bit long one. Let's erase all these and then put one here, erase this one. We don't need these. So what this one does is going to execute and print 1, and then the end specifies that do not go to the next line. Now, if I copy this one and put a 2 here, then it's going to print 1. It's not going to go to the next line, then it's going to print 2. If I run this program now, you can see that 1, 2 are going to be right after each other. To show you what will happen if I change end here to nothing, then it's going to print 1, then it goes to the next line and print 2. You can see that it's printing 1 here, and then the next line is going to go to print 2. Now, we are going back to the same program that we wrote before, and we are going to talk about the variable. Remember that we defined the temp to be a variable because it is on the left side of the equal sign, and it's going to store the value of this expression on the right after it is evaluated. Now, there are a couple of rules that you have to follow when naming your variables. Here we call it the temp. The first thing, that the variable name, they must contain only numbers, letters, and the underscore. Nothing other than these characters. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. You cannot have, for instance, space between the character name. For instance, temp like this one is going to cause error, and the program is not going to run. The other thing is that the variable name cannot start with a number. You can't have something like one temp. You cannot start a variable name with a number. And the most important thing is that the uppercase and lowercase matters. For instance, if you have temp like this, it is different from a variable name which has an uppercase of T, like this one. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be at the beginning, even if you have, let's say, M to be uppercase. This temp is different from the previous temp where everything was in lowercase. So be careful about that one. But the most important thing is, when you are naming your variables, please name them according to what exactly they do in the program. Do not come up with names that do not mean anything. For instance, do not call a variable junk 1, junk 2, junk 3, because you are going to end up having problem when you go back to modify the program later on. You have to read the code and spend time to understand what exactly the variable is used